It's happening, and it doesn't look big on the outside, and that is exactly why most people miss it. You may not get a loud moment. You may not get a shocking event. What you're more likely to get is a feeling you can't explain, a conversation that suddenly feels heavy, or a strange pause right before you say yes to something you felt certain about only a few minutes ago. That pause matters more than you think, because the Scorpio moon is bringing emotions to the surface, while Mars and Neptune are making your thoughts and feelings harder to ignore. The next 48 hours can either expose the truth or pull you into a feeling that was never fully yours. Today is August 18th, 2026, and the reason everything feels so intense is that the Scorpio moon is moving through a sky that is still carrying tension from Mars and Neptune. Mars wants action. It pushes you to make a choice, defend yourself, react, or get an answer. Neptune works very differently. It can make things feel unclear, make you question what you really want, and make something seem important before you fully understand it. When these energies come together, while the moon moves through Scorpio, emotions can become much stronger. You may feel things more deeply. Your inner sense may become stronger, but so can doubt. You may strongly want to do something, even when you are not completely sure why. That is why so many people may feel a strong need to act, change something, or make a choice without fully knowing what they are being pulled toward. What makes Scorpio moon energy different from ordinary emotional intensity is that it does not stay on the surface. It goes under, it investigates, it remembers, it notices what someone did not say, what changed in their tone, what felt slightly off, what has been quietly building beneath an issue that everyone has tried to keep simple. Scorpio is not interested in pretending everything is fine just because things look controlled from the outside. It wants the hidden truth. It wants the motive beneath the action. It wants the feeling beneath the explanation. During this moon, even people who normally keep things light can suddenly feel much more private, much more guarded, or much more consumed by something they cannot easily discuss. That alone would be enough to make the next 2 days intense. But the reason this window is more than just emotional is because the intensity is arriving in an atmosphere where action and illusion are rubbing against each other. Mars can make you want to act before you fully understand what you are acting on. Neptune can make you feel something profoundly and still leave you unsure whether the feeling belongs to the present moment or to an older wound rising through the present. Then Scorpio adds emotional X-ray vision, and suddenly you are not just reacting to what happened today. You may be reacting to what today touched inside you. That distinction matters because it is the difference between emotional truth and emotional projection, and most people do not notice the difference until after they have already moved. This is why one of the first signs of this transit is not a dramatic event, but a strange pause. You are about to send the message. You are about to explain yourself. You are about to push for clarity, confess something, call someone out, reveal a plan, or make a quick decision that felt obvious a moment ago. Then, for a second, something in you hesitates, not enough to fully stop you, just enough to create a flicker of doubt or pressure in the chest. Do not dismiss that moment. Under this kind of sky, that brief hesitation can be more intelligent than your first emotional impulse. It may be the exact place where your deeper awareness notices that your timing, your motive, or your interpretation is not as clean as you thought it was. A lot of people assume emotional clarity feels smooth, immediate, and forceful. But that is not always how truth arrives, especially under Neptune. Sometimes truth arrives as interruption, It interrupts the urge to react. It interrupts the story you were already building. It interrupts the version of events that lets you move quickly without having to sit in uncertainty. Mars hates that uncertainty. Mars wants to go. Scorpio wants to know. Neptune wants to dissolve the false image, but it does not always do it in a comfortable way. So what you may be experiencing right now is not simply confusion. It may be the dismantling of a false certainty. And that feels very different. It feels emotional because part of you wants to hold on to the first story, while another part of you can sense that story is incomplete. That is why the next 48 hours can feel emotionally exposing. Scorpio has no patience for fake calm. If you have been trying to stay composed about something that is actually bothering you, this moon can bring it up. If you have been telling yourself you are over something that still has emotional charge, this moon can reveal the residue. If you have been staying busy so you do not have to sit with what you really feel, Mars-Neptune can make that strategy fall apart very quickly, because now even ordinary moments can carry emotional symbolism. You hear one sentence and suddenly it lands as if it means more. You revisit one memory and it feels unfinished again. You notice one pattern and realize it has been happening much longer than you admitted. What makes this especially powerful is that not all of what surfaces is there to hurt you. Some of it is surfacing to show you where your energy has been leaking. A Scorpio moon can reveal emotional attachment, emotional defensiveness, emotional pride, or emotional secrecy, and none of those things are always obvious while you are living inside them. Sometimes you do not realize how much energy you have spent controlling your response, controlling your image, or controlling a situation until something threatens that control. Then suddenly, the feeling seems far bigger than the event. That is one of the signatures of this transit. The trigger may be small, the emotional reaction may be huge, and hidden inside that mismatch is information. For some people, the theme will be mistrust. You may find yourself questioning what someone really meant, wondering whether there is more to the story, or sensing that someone is being selective with what they reveal. For others, it will be vulnerability. You may feel more emotionally naked than usual, more aware of how much you care, more aware of what you cannot force, more aware of where you want reassurance but do not want to ask for it directly. Then there is another group of people who will feel this as exhaustion with their own inner conflict. They will realize they are tired of going back and forth, tired of feeling something deeply but second-guessing themselves the moment it becomes real, tired of waiting for a sign that removes all risk before they choose a direction. That inner back and forth is important because one of the hidden effects of Mars-Neptune is that it can make motion feel possible while keeping intention blurred. You can stay mentally active for hours without moving anything forward. You can replay the conversation, imagine the confrontation, revise the message, examine every facial expression, predict every outcome, and still not get any closer to the truth. That is the trap. It feels like processing, but often it is just emotional motion without emotional resolution. Scorpio can intensify that because it does not like loose ends. It wants to find the root. Yet Neptune can make the root harder to isolate, because what you are feeling now may be tangled with what you felt months ago, or even with a pattern that started long before the current situation appeared. So if you feel especially emotional, ask yourself something very simple. Is this feeling only about what is happening now, or is what is happening now touching something older? That question alone can change the whole next 2 days. Because if this is partly old material, rising through a current trigger, then acting immediately may not bring relief. It may only externalize something that still needs inner clarity first. This is why many people under this transit feel a strong urge to say everything at once. They want to reveal the frustration, the fear, the desire, the resentment, the suspicion, the hurt. They want to make the invisible visible. But if you speak before you understand what part of the feeling is current and what part is accumulated, you may communicate intensity more clearly than truth. Now, that does not mean silence is always the answer. It means timing matters. There is a difference between suppressing emotion and letting emotion finish speaking inside you before you send it outward. Under Scorpio Moon energy, the instinct to protect what is still forming can actually be wise. Not every realization is ready for immediate conversation. Not every feeling becomes clearer once it is shared. In fact, under Neptune, some things can lose precision the moment they enter other people's interpretations. You say it out loud too soon, and now your feeling is not just yours anymore. It is mixed with their reaction, their projection, their advice, their insecurity, their misunderstanding, or even their ability to make you doubt what you originally sensed. That is one of the strongest warnings of this transit. Do not confuse the urge to externalize with the need to reveal. The urge can be real without being wise. The feeling may be pointing somewhere true, but that does not mean your first expression of it is the cleanest expression of it. Scorpio knows that power grows in private before it becomes effective in public. Mars wants release now. Neptune can make release feel like relief even when it creates more confusion. So if you notice yourself wanting to announce a plan, confess an emotion, expose a suspicion, or explain a big inner shift before you have sat with it, slow down. Some things get stronger when spoken. Others get weaker because they were still building their shape inside you. Relationship dynamics can get especially intense here because Scorpio Moon energy tends to magnify the hidden emotional contracts between people. You may suddenly notice how much is implied but never addressed. You may become aware of emotional imbalance, of who pursues and who withdraws, of who reveals and who conceals, of where one person wants reassurance while the other wants freedom, or where one person wants honesty but is afraid of the answer honesty might bring. Mars in Cancer adds another layer to this because now emotions are not just deep, they are protective. People can become defensive about what they love, sensitive about what they have invested in, and reactive when they feel exposed, dismissed, or emotionally unsafe. That means the next 2 days are not ideal for forcing emotional clarity through confrontation alone. If a conversation must happen, it needs to happen with awareness of the atmosphere. The emotional truth may be real, but the delivery can still distort it. Under Mars-Neptune tension, motives can get mixed. You may think you are asking for honesty when part of you is actually seeking reassurance. You may think you are setting a boundary when part of you is trying to regain emotional control. You may think you are exposing someone else's inconsistency when really you are reacting to your own fear of uncertainty. This does not invalidate the feeling. It just means clean motives matter more than usual, because unclear motives can turn even a necessary conversation into something foggier than it needed to be. Work decisions can also feel strangely emotional during this window, even if the issue does not look personal. That is because Scorpio does not separate power from feeling as neatly as people pretend. A delayed answer, a leadership shift, a confusing instruction, a mixed signal from someone in authority, an opportunity that feels exciting but slightly unstable. All of these things can start carrying emotional weight. Mars wants to move. Neptune makes the route unclear. Scorpio wants to know what is really going on. So the danger here is not necessarily a disastrous decision. It is the slow seduction of moving, because the discomfort of waiting feels unbearable. When people cannot tolerate uncertainty, they often convert anxiety into action. This transit can make that especially tempting. If you are feeling that pressure, watch for one pattern in particular: the need to act simply to end the feeling. That need is not the same as intuitive timing. Sometimes action is correct because the moment is ready. Other times, action only feels necessary because the emotional tension of not knowing has become too uncomfortable. Scorpio Moon energy can intensify that discomfort because it magnifies what is hidden and unfinished. Yet Neptune reminds you that not everything unfinished is meant to be forced into definition immediately. Some truths clarify through patience. Some answers reveal themselves only after the emotional charge settles. And some opportunities that seem delayed are not blocked at all. They are being separated from fantasy so that what remains can actually hold its weight. This is why the next 2 days can also contain hidden blessings. Not every cancellation is loss. Not every delay is denial. Not every awkward emotional moment is damage. Sometimes what feels like emotional disruption is redirection happening in real time. A conversation that does not go where you expected may prevent you from saying too much too soon. A plan that slows down may keep you from investing energy into something built on wishful thinking. A strange emotional discomfort may stop you from repeating a pattern you are about to call fate. Under Scorpio and Neptune, what saves you may not look comforting at first. It may look like frustration, silence, ambiguity, or a door that does not fully open. But later, you may realize that was the point where something unstable failed to lock into place. Another thing many people notice during this kind of transit is how the body starts speaking the emotion before the mind can explain it. Sleep can feel deeper or more disturbed. Dreams may intensify. Appetite can change. The chest can feel tight. The nervous system can swing between alertness and fatigue. You may feel like your energy is not exactly low, but it is not clean either. It is emotionally charged. That is often what happens when Scorpio Moon energy meets unresolved emotional material. The psyche starts drawing more attention to what has been stored beneath conscious thought. Add Neptune, and those signals can become symbolic, intuitive, or hard to translate immediately. So instead of demanding instant interpretation, it is better to notice patterns. What feeling keeps returning? What subject keeps resurfacing? What emotional tone follows you from one context into another? Pay attention especially to repetition. If the same emotional theme keeps appearing through different people, different memories, or different situations, the transit is probably not just showing you an isolated problem. It is showing you the pattern underneath several problems. That is where Scorpio is brilliant. It does not simply say, "This hurt." It asks, "Why does this particular thing keep touching the same place in you?" Mars can make that question urgent. Neptune can make the answer slippery. But the answer is still there. Often, it is about attachment, trust, boundaries, self-protection, or the fear of revealing how much something actually matters. People do not usually become this emotionally reactive around what means nothing to them. Intensity is often proof of investment, whether that investment is love, pride, hope, fear, or control. This is also the part of the transit where power struggles can quietly emerge. Scorpio Moon square. Pluto energy can amplify the instinct to hold position emotionally. You may notice yourself wanting the last word, wanting proof, wanting emotional leverage, wanting certainty before vulnerability, or wanting to know more than the other person knows about you. None of this makes you bad. It makes you human under pressure. But it does reveal how quickly emotional intensity can turn into strategy when people are afraid of what they feel. One of Scorpio's defenses is control. One of Neptune's shadows is confusion. Mix them together, and you can get a very strange dynamic where people both want truth and fear it. Both want intimacy and armor themselves against it. Both want clarity and contribute to the fog. If that sounds contradictory, it is because this transit is contradictory. You may want to get closer to someone while also wanting to disappear. You may want honesty while also resisting what honesty might confirm. You may want to follow your instincts while also questioning whether those instincts are clean. This inner contradiction is not a mistake. It is the experience itself. The goal is not to become instantly simple in a complex sky. The goal is to become aware enough that you do not let contradiction drive your behavior without your consent. Awareness is what turns intensity into information. Without awareness, intensity becomes compulsion. And compulsion is where people send the message, make the accusation, reveal the plan, or chase the answer simply because the emotion feels too alive to leave unacted upon. So what should you not do between August 18th and 20th? Do not confuse emotional pressure with final truth. Do not assume that because you feel something strongly, you already understand it completely. Do not tell yourself that urgency always means alignment. Do not over-explain your next step just to make it feel more real. Do not hand a half-formed insight to people who have not earned access to it. Do not use action as a substitute for clarity. And perhaps most importantly, do not make permanent conclusions from a temporary emotional peak. Scorpio can show you the depth. Neptune can show you the blur. Mars can push you to treat the moment as decisive. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let the emotion reveal itself fully before you decide what story it belongs to. At the same time, there is something you absolutely should do. Choose one small action that grounds emotion into reality without forcing the whole future into place. That might be writing the truth instead of texting it. It might be postponing a confrontation, but naming the feeling honestly to yourself. It might be cleaning up one practical detail that reduces emotional noise. It might be stepping back from the spiral and asking, what do I actually know? Not what do I fear, suspect, or imagine. Under Mars-Neptune, clean action matters more than dramatic action. Scorpio does not need theater, it needs honesty. So your task is not to do more. It is to move more cleanly, even if the move is small. A small, truthful action can stabilize more than a big emotional performance ever could. One of the most useful questions during this transit is this: what am I trying to protect right now? If the answer is your dignity, your heart, your hope, your pride, your dream, your image, your privacy, or your need to feel chosen, then you are already getting closer to the real material. Mars in Cancer is protective by nature. It acts to defend what feels personal. Neptune can make the threat feel larger or less defined. Scorpio makes the emotional stakes harder to ignore. So beneath many reactions in this window, there is a protective instinct trying to guard something precious. The better you understand what that precious thing is, the less likely you are to mistake self-protection for intuition. Sometimes your instincts are right. Other times, your defenses are simply loud. There is another subtle feature of this transit that deserves attention. Emotional intuition is real here, but it does not always arrive in a finished form. You may sense that something is changing before you can explain how. You may know a connection is shifting before anything visible confirms it. You may realize that a goal, a friendship, an attachment, or a role in your life no longer feels the same, even if outwardly nothing has happened yet. That feeling should not be dismissed, but it also should not be dramatized too quickly. Neptune's job is often to dissolve identification before a new identity is fully formed. That can feel like emotional uncertainty, but sometimes it is really transition. Something false is losing emotional authority over you, and because it once felt central, the release can feel disorienting before it feels liberating. August 19th may feel like the emotional center of the wave for many people, because by then, the Scorpio Moon has had time to deepen the feeling, and the mind has had time to build stories around that feeling. This is often when people feel most tempted to define everything. They want the answer, the outcome, the confession, the closure, the certainty. Yet this is exactly where awareness becomes powerful. If you can notice the craving to force an ending, you can stop yourself from letting one emotional peak write an entire narrative. Some people are going to become more suspicious on this day. Some will become more vulnerable. Some will suddenly see through an illusion they had been living with. Others will realize they have been calling something intuition when it was actually emotional exhaustion asking for relief. By August 20th, another shift begins. The moon starts moving towards Sagittarius later in the day, and that matters because the emotional atmosphere begins to release its grip little by little. The feeling is still there, but it starts looking for perspective rather than depth alone. That does not mean the Scorpio material disappears. It means you may finally be able to understand it without being completely inside it. This is why not every answer needs to arrive on the emotional peak. Sometimes, the smartest thing you can do is let the wave crest, hold your center, and wait for the sky to offer a little more distance. Clarity often comes after intensity, not during it. When the pressure lessens, you can see which feelings were showing you truth and which ones were only magnifying the fog. This is also why the emotional heaviness of these dates should not automatically scare you. Intensity is not always punishment. Sometimes it is concentration. Life is pulling your attention towards something you can no longer afford to keep half-conscious. That may be an attachment you have romanticized, a resentment you have normalized, a desire you have hidden, a fear you have dressed up as practicality, or a dream you have delayed because part of you still does not trust it. Scorpio reveals where the energy is locked. Mars tells you something wants movement. Neptune asks whether the version of the story you have been telling can survive contact with deeper truth. If it cannot, that is not failure. That is purification. It means the emotional reality is becoming too strong to be managed by a weakened narrative. And this brings us to one of the most important points of the entire transit. What Neptune quietly steals in moments like this is not your opportunities. It is your clean intention. It scatters it. It diffuses it. It makes you mentally active while emotionally uncertain. You start thinking around the thing instead of moving through it. You imagine different futures, rehearse different conversations, question your different motives until the original pulse of truth becomes harder to hear. That is why people leave these transits feeling drained, not because they lacked emotion, but because their emotion never fully became direction. If you want to work with this energy rather than be worked over by it, protect your intention. Simplify it. Bring it back to one true sentence, one true need, one true boundary, one true step. For some, that sentence will be, "I need more time before I respond." For others, it will be, "I know what I feel, but I need to understand why I feel it this strongly." For someone else, it may be, "This situation is not confusing because there is no truth. It is confusing because I have been afraid of the truth." That kind of sentence is powerful because it cuts through Neptune without denying emotion. It lets Mars move without becoming reckless. It lets Scorpio keep its depth without drowning in it. And that balance is the real medicine of this window. You are not here to become emotionless. You are here to become more exact inside emotion. That is very different. Precision is what turns deep feeling into transformation instead of chaos. If a relationship is meant to deepen, this transit can reveal what honesty it requires. If a plan is not as aligned as you wanted to believe, this transit can expose the fault line. If an old wound still has more influence than you thought, this transit can bring it into the light. If your intuition has been trying to get your attention through discomfort, this transit can make that discomfort impossible to ignore. None of those outcomes are small, yet all of them begin subtly. That is the theme. Subtle beginnings, strong emotional resonance, delayed but meaningful clarity. So do not underestimate what seems minor. The off comment, the pause in your chest, the urge that suddenly feels charged, the delay that disrupts the plan, the dream that stays with you, the irritation that is clearly about more than what just happened. Small things can carry the whole message. You may also notice that this transit changes what ambition feels like. Mars in Cancer does not chase in the same way a colder Mars might. It moves toward what feels worth protecting, nurturing, or defending. Neptune in Aries can blur identity and desire, making people question whether they are pursuing what they truly want or what they once used to survive, impress, or prove themselves. Then Scorpio asks the uncomfortable question: what do you actually want when no one is watching and no performance is required? That is not just a practical question. It is an emotional one, because many people are emotionally attached to goals that no longer feel alive and emotionally resistant to desires that are actually more genuine. This transit can expose that split with startling force. As we move through these days, remember that not all emotional intensity is a sign that something is going wrong. Sometimes it is the sign that something hidden is finally becoming conscious enough to work with. That can feel messy. It can feel vulnerable. It can feel strange to suddenly care this much, remember this much, suspect this much, or need this much clarity. But awareness changes the whole experience. Instead of asking, "Why am I so emotional?" you begin asking, "What is this emotion showing me that I was not ready to see before?" The second question is powerful because it assumes meaning, not failure. It turns the transit into revelation rather than self-judgment. And once you do that, even discomfort becomes usable. So if you feel yourself intensifying over the next 48 hours, slow the moment down. Watch the hesitation. Protect what is still forming. Do not speak just to relieve pressure. Do not move just to end uncertainty. Let the emotional wave show you the deeper pattern before you decide how to act on it. Something very real may be surfacing now, but it deserves better than a rushed reaction. It deserves your full awareness, Because if you can stay present long enough to separate the truth from the fog, this transit does not just make you emotional. It makes you sharper. It makes you more honest. It makes you less available for illusions that once controlled your timing. And that is a kind of power most people only recognize after they have already missed the moment. If you are still here, then you have already done the most important thing, which is refusing to treat this emotional shift like meaningless noise. That matters. Many people will move through these dates, thinking they are simply moody, sensitive, restless, or overwhelmed, and they will never ask what the feeling was trying to reveal. But you did ask. You stayed with it. And that alone changes how this energy can move through your life. The point was never to become perfect in these days. The point was to become aware enough that the feeling does not use you blindly. Let that be your advantage. Let that be what carries forward after August 20th, when the emotional intensity begins to loosen and perspective starts returning. Because in the end, some days are not here to make you do more. They are here to make you see more clearly what has already been moving underneath your life. August 18th to 20th is one of those windows. The Scorpio Moon is not asking you to panic. It is asking you to look deeper. Mars-Neptune is not here only to confuse you. It is here to show you where urgency and illusion have been crossing in your choices. And once you see that, you can move differently. Not colder, not harder, just truer. So, whatever rises in you now, do not assume it is meaningless, and do not assume it is final. Sit with it long enough for the deeper message to emerge. Then move with more awareness than you had before. That is how you leave this window, stronger than you entered it.